Committee of the Whole meeting order for April 2nd, 2019. Approval of the agenda of the April 2nd, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Moved.
Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes. That the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held March 19th, 2019 be adopted as presented. Moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next order of business, over to Mr. Fortolowski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Tonight is a continuation of the budget series, and what Mr. Cordes is going to recap are the changes that were requested as part of last committee meeting, and also provide options regarding infrastructure investment and levels of tolerance, as it were, for that infrastructure investment. You'll be reminded we still have a significant infrastructure deficit and a lot of work to do. So it is wise to consider maximizing the amount of money we can set away for future and invest. Mr. Cordes.
Thank you. So just like last meeting, I'll just go through the changes that were discussed at the last meeting. They'll be up on here. We'll be handing out a package that has this, so you don't have to go crazy writing down what I'm talking about. So we did receive our revised assessment roll. It was on Friday last week. So the blue numbers you see here, we plugged the new assessment data into our formula, and it amounts to overall $5,000 more revenue between these accounts and the police revenue, which is at the end of my discussion. So I won't spend a lot of time on them. They're just in and outs. An increase there of about $3,600 in the general municipal levy. The next item we added in was the BC. Yeah, this was a new one that came up. It wasn't discussed last meeting, but we received our first payment from Recycle BC for February of about $9,000. So we project that to be about $100,000 for the year. And later on, I'll talk about we offset based just on an estimate some cost increases for picking it up. So it's going to be a trial year, but the revenue looks pretty good at around 100,000. So that's that figure there. We brought in the CLCCF revenue sharing, which was received last year. So we'll bring that in as a revenue item, and that's offset later on by the $100,000 expense if we go that far in expense at all. Anything that's not going to be expense will just go back into deferred revenue and be used for subsequent years. We had a final copy of the victim assistance grant, so that increased $1,600 from the last session. The transfer from surplus is just a residual after all these changes, so if anything that we were short, I've put to the transfer from surplus. Over on the expense side, so as discussed last meeting, between the council wages and benefits and the per diems, that was an increase of $45,000 that was included. Next item, small adjustments regarding the Christmas party, and that was increased $1,000. I reviewed the leases on the copiers, and charges, so we increased that, 1,500. There was a small $300 adjustment on the contracts under janitorial. Next item was on page 12. That's the $100,000 expense offsetting the revenue on the CLCCF. A small adjustment on the projection under fireman wages. We go way on to page 33. That's the waste management. Yeah. There we go. So that's where I just bumped up, and it's just a guesstimate at this stage of the game, an increase of 50,000. So we would still gain 50,000 if it were to be like this. But until we get the new contract signed, we really can't be firm on that number yet.
That's for the recycle.
Yep, strictly recycling. Then we added 30,000 for the Hope Mountain Center for the trail maintenance. The wood carving was doubled, so 5,000 was added. And then we bumped up that transfer to Public Works Vehicle Reserve from 25,000 up to 250. The last one was the police fund, and again, those are just, there was about a $1,600 increase in tax revenue once I did the revised assessment totals. And offset was just a small change in the transfer from surplus. It went down $1,300. So those were the changes. Now I can pass out the handouts. And what you're going to find in your package are updated scenarios with the revised assessment roll total information. You're going to find a summary of all the scenarios that I'm going to talk about tonight. And also on the one summary page, I put all the changes on those sample properties that we discussed in the first meeting onto a summary page so you can actually see how it changes in each scenario. But first, I have a little surprise. We're going to have a class. And we're going to have a class tonight.
Yeah. Good.
So what I'm going to try to do here is explain how we do our tax calculation so that hopefully you'll get a better understanding of where these numbers are starting from and how the scenarios pan out in the 6 scenarios that I've presented. So the way we do this
Show us that.
Whoops. I don't know why this isn't working down here. So we've got key components in what I call step 1 in our preparation of it's weird, it's never happened before. So there's 4 key components that goes into how we arrive at the tax revenue. So we've got our last year's final assessment roll totals. We've got last year's final rates, which were approved in the bylaw. And then The first two gives you what our final tax levy was in 2018. And then what we have in our formula is we have a 2019 revised assessment roll total less any new construction that's for 2019. So here's our 2018 final assessment roll totals, and this is for all the classes. Sorry, I'm just doing residential. And that was our final residential tax rate last year. And that's what we generated in revenue last year. So now we have our revised assessment roll for 2019, which we just got on Friday. I take out the assessment values for the new construction, and we come out to what we call a 2019 base assessment. So in order to generate the exact same tax revenue that we did last year, it generates this revised calculated tax rate. So instead of 4.39293, we're down at 3.80386 to get the same amount of revenue as our starting point. Everybody follow that? So then we've got the rate here with the revised rate, and that was the new construction value. So we're going to generate 105, and this, keep in mind, this is just residential class. I didn't want to go through all six. So, and then you've got our levy from, our starting point levy from last year. So now the adjusted levy is up to 4.765 from this 4659384. So when I go through this exercise for the remainder of the classes, we're going to generate 269,000 more revenue than in 2018, and it was 264, but as I talked at the top, we gained 5,000 more revenue. And then that 269 is made up of, I think it's about 175,000 of new construction, or a new levy for regarding new construction. And then the balance of that 269,000 is municipalities are allowed to cap the utility rate at 40.00. So I think their formula for that is you can have your utility rate at 2.5 times your business class rate, or to a maximum of 40. So our business class rate times 2.5 was under 40, so I could bring it up. So it's a bonus to us, so we can generate more class 2 utility revenue. So you throw that in with the 175, and that's where I get this 269, which is our starting point, which was in the first draft budget. So this is just kind of a summary here. So we're using the 2019 revised assessment totals. We're not including the amounts for new construction. We adjust the tax rate to where it calculates the same amount of revenue of 2018, and that is our 2019 tax rate starting point. And then it goes on to what I just spoke about there. And then, so what I'll do is I'll leave this slide up, and then we'll go to the handouts. And I'll probably talk more about the summary page here, but you've got all of these 6 scenarios individually. They're all transferred onto this, on this sheet here, so you can look at them all on the same page rather than flipping back and forth. So if you refer to the summary page, which it has the
It's buried down, it's not at the top.
the single page.
A single page after all those. Not quite. There
No,
we go.
bring it back.
Are you able to,
Yeah, she's got it.
okay, thanks.
So on the summary page, as I said, scenario A, which was in our first draft, was our starting point where we were generating $269,000 extra revenue. And then directly below that are the properties that we took as samples, and you can see the first five, there was a reduction in taxes, and there was some small increases in the other two samples, and then the business properties. So then, the difference between, if you look at the screen, from scenario, if you go from scenario A to B, we're bumping up a 3% tax rate increase on that starting point of 3.80386. So it's not a 3% tax revenue increase, it's a 3% tax rate increase. And this is the basis for the scenarios I'm providing, is they're half point percentage increments to give you an idea of what revenue is generated. So we go from 269 all the way up to 584.4, where we go from the base rate, which is the adjusted 2019 rate, up to 5% on top of that. So those are the scenarios for council to look at and decide which they are more favorable to. And in making that decision, you can also see on the summary sheet what the effect is on those sample properties. So the first property, doesn't matter which scenario, they're going to pay a bit less. 4 out of those 7 in year or scenario B onwards, they're going to be paying a bit more. The fourth example, they're going to pay less throughout on each scenario. Now, the other thing to just keep in mind here too is this is strictly municipal levy, which we're responsible for. I can't speak to school tax or what effect the regional district requisition tax would be or any of those. So this is strictly the tax rate that's in our control. And then you see the examples with the business properties. And the reason that a lot of the business properties are going down is that there wasn't a lot of properties that had a real significant individual increase on their assessment. The closest one that we can kind of find there is around 16.9% assessment increase right at the bottom of the page, where you can see from scenario B on, they actually go from paying less in A, and then they end up incrementally increasing throughout the next scenarios. The other sheet, just for your information, that I provided was a summary of the assessment comparisons for your reading enjoyment. So really, you know, that's, and the other thing to keep in mind too is if there's something that you like but you want to go in between, you have that right to do that. You're not held to my incremental 0.5 increases. You might say, hey, let's do 3 1/4. I won't have the answer tonight for you, but you can pretty much tell that it's going to be between those numbers. So, are there any questions on that? Clear as... But hopefully it gives you an understanding of where we came from in presenting the first round of tax revenue, to know where we came up with that 269. It was a formulated through our spreadsheet that, and what we call here is like if we use the second column here, the 3.80386, as you recall in the previous slides, the new assessment calculated at that rate gives us last year's revenue. That was our tax rate starting point, so that's technically what we would call a 0% tax increase, tax tax rate increase as our starting point. And throughout all of these new revenue column are the amounts that are related to new construction as well, and the utility cap. So it's a combination of increase in the rate, but also, as you can see in the summary, I have another set of summary pages which are probably a little easier to read, but it's broken down by class, and it matches the summary sheet, but it actually breaks down between our 6 classes that we have, and that looks like so. And so those are broken down by class, but you'll see that at the top of the page, for example, scenario A, that's a typo there, shouldn't say 3% on that. On A. But it summarizes the 269 increase over to, for example, the total taxes on the detailed page is $7,969,000. Oh, I do have it broken down in 2 pages. So, yeah, pretty much all the information in your package is transferred to that summary sheet, so just to make it easier for you to see all the numbers at once and help you decide which scenario you might want to go with. So I guess that's most of what I can say on that. Council can discuss what flavor they might like.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cortez, for doing that background work. I guess at this point we need to, excuse me, hear a bit from council on what they have appetite for. So, or any questions for the Director of Finance?
On the business end of things, how come such a decrease, like you see on the business sample properties, such a decrease in the taxes, just because of the way the tax rate works?
Well, because the tax rate,
The assessments were down as well.
like you notice that the tax rate in 2018 on residential was 4.39. That rate in all classes went down.
Yeah, okay.
So if their assessment rate, or if their assessment total didn't change that much, obviously you're gonna pay less because the rate went down.
My rate went down.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just quickly add, at the base draft budget, that was discussed here where we're gaining 269, we're looking at 2% inflation rate, about 154. So don't forget that if we just stay with the initial draft budget, albeit good or not good, we will eventually be losing ground to inflation as well.
Quite frankly, that's why scenario B interests me. I think we should consider that.
I think B is a good option.
B.
Myself, yeah.
Councillor Smith, do you have?
Kevin might be able to help me out on this. What's our total rough number deficit for asset management?
Well, we own 256 million roughly in infrastructure, 30% of that's in deficit. So that's 70 or so $1 million
No.
of infrastructure that's operating beyond its useful life.
So, just personally for me, not that I want to see the maximum increase, but for what the totals show on the F side, I think no matter what, when the tax notices go out, everybody's gonna see their taxes increase or not, or decrease, but they're gonna see the number at the bottom, they're just gonna look what they paid last year. They're not gonna look at what regional district's sending in, they're not gonna look at what school district's sending in, but I do think us doing our due diligence, I'm in favor of that, because I know from what we've had from our water plan and everything else that we're running, we're seeing some pretty significant deficits, and I think this is an opportunity for us to get ahead of the game. Not ahead of the game, start getting towards the game. The other thing too, is this, for you, Dale, is it, if there's say no grounds game next year on new development like that, I don't think we're gonna see that situation, but if there's no gains whatsoever, you say there's 170,000 of new construction this year. Next year, the rough estimate we're looking at probably isn't gonna be an opportunity to make $504,000 for reserves, is there?
Well,
If there was no growth in construction, I don't foresee that happening, but
like, say there was no growth at all
yeah.
in this scenario, you'd be going back to this slide going,
Less
we'd be having this discussion, but we'd only be generating that, because in this scenario here,
That's what.
where we're adding that tax rate times our new construction value, in the residential class, we were gaining 105,000 in revenue. So if I were taking out of the equation, we would probably only have seen the increase due to the utility cap increase.
Pretty bumped up.
Because our formula calculates the formula, it doesn't know that there's a 40.0 cap, that's the provincial government regulation. So we adjust our spreadsheet upwards to gain that additional revenue. So if nothing were to happen, and it was only a change in assessments, then obviously I'd go through the same exercise, I just wouldn't have this portion of the calculation.
Councilor Erickson.
So, going back to the F scenario that we're just talking about, between the A scenario and the F scenario, there's what, $320,000 difference? So
Probably.
that would be the increase that we would be
That's
levying
what you'd be able to have
over last year.
over the like the graph that I've just
Yeah.
gone through. You'd have another 320,000 if you wanted to throw it in the infrastructure reserve.
Can you put that scenario up again, please? I mean, A through F?
This one here.
Yes. Sorry, ask your, what was that, Councilor Erickson?
Well, if we had the A scenario, which was just the regular increase that we had from the construction,
Right,
if we had that. But then if we go to the F, we get $320,000 more, that's all we're bringing in for this, with the F.
Well,
rate.
I mean, you're bringing in,
We're
keep in mind that
we're still
all
bringing
these
$260.
numbers in the fourth column there are increases over last year's
Yeah,
tax rate.
yeah, no, I understand that, it's in it, but.
So you're bringing in almost $600,000 more revenue from 2018.
18.
Any other input?
I myself would be leaning more towards kind of B or C, but I mean, I understand like what Dusty's saying though, the sense that infrastructure and everything's kind of operating at a deficit, and it's kind of scary to think that how many years it will take to kind of slowly pick away at that. But
So, and then if you go to the actual, like the Silver Creek, and you look in your budget, it was a general municipal portion, I think it's called, and you're not really, well, some of the assessments are going up quite a bit, and most of them are just going up, well, some 19, some 73, 78 dollars.
See, we tried to show you on the residential, the average assessment increase due to strictly market change was 16.11. That's from the BC Assessment website for Hope. And so in those scenarios, the bottom two are very close to that, and you can see that in the scenarios they're paying slightly more than they did last year. But if they were below that, like there's two that are all in black there. So they're still paying less because their assessment didn't go up that much.
Basically, if you're under the 10% mark almost.
It kind of looks that way there.
That's looking at it, the 10% mark, yeah.
not, because we've been, like the last 4 years, we were going at approximately 2% on average. But in order to keep, we're not gaining much. We're really not gaining much as far as picking up on the infrastructure that we need to
No.
repair. And actually, I don't think we're gaining any, we're probably losing. But right now, we're at a point where the town is really, we really need to put some money into the infrastructure. You know, the roads and the sewer and the infrastructure. I think we're gonna have to bite the bullet a bit and at least, I know 600,000 sounds a lot of money for a small town, but it really isn't a lot of money when you start paving a piece of the street or putting sidewalk in or doing some maintenance or buying some vehicles. When you start thinking two plow trucks, because that's it. It's used it all up right there. So. Pretty scary.
Just a quick comment, I'm personally in favor of option E or F for my own personal thing. I think staff's doing a good job and cut, just even from this year's budget, from last year's budget to this year's budget, seeing where capital projects have been cut down, and just the focus is on trying to deal with some of the assets. I think staff's done a great job on focusing in, we need to save some money, where we need to save it, and put the money towards asset management, and I think staff has done a great job doing that. And I think the only way, personally, I think to help them, is that we have to take a political one on our shoulders and say, we're gonna put this increase in, it's gonna be somewhat minimal to, on our end of things, to the public. Certain situations are gonna obviously change, but I think it's for us to say that we're gonna try and focus in on getting the best bang for our buck on the infrastructure. So, that's my personal opinion on it.
Okay, you send to the table, any input to make a decision?
I can see exactly where you're coming from. I mean, I can't see it being realistic actually going with B, but, yeah, I think, in order to make up ground, I think at the very least probably D, maybe.
That's fair.
So that, you know, we're not spending a lot of money on personnel, we're not increasing that other than council's remuneration, which is what, 40,000?
45.
45,000. The rest is not, we're
Well,
basically,
I mean, there's increases due to inflation,
yeah, no, I understand that, but we're,
contractual, obligations.
we're not hiring 6 extra staff.
No.
Yeah, we're not growing.
You know, we're not growing, but what we really needed is in our infrastructure. We really do need it.
And the one thing that helps with the, with some of the infrastructure is obviously the gas tax money. They did say they're gonna, the one-time double for this year, but that's not included in here, so anything we get is gravy on top of what's budgeted, but, that agreement may not last forever. I mean, it's probably still another 5 years out, but we can't predict what the federal and provincial governments are gonna negotiate, so that's been one stream of money for example, for the pavement plan, but if that were to go dry, then you're really only kind of pot to pull from would be an infrastructure reserve. And at least, with a decent infrastructure reserve, it also gives you some leverage for grant applications, because you always have some portion of the grant is going to be,
Want to be funded.
it has to be funded by the district, so.
Now, on this, just one question too, through this, now, does this, on the surpluses, does it just go into a surplus holding, or does it go, do you have to put it into different reserves as it comes in?
Well, whatever scenario, I can plug some of these numbers in and show you what the bottom line's gonna be. What I envision is that, for example,
Do that.
if I plugged in scenario F,
It's the fun.
what's gonna happen is the bottom line's gonna show the difference between the 269 and the 584 as a surplus. Because right now we're balanced with the 269 in there, right? So from 458 to 269, you're gonna have a,
320.
350 and 400.
what about 31?
320 is close enough.
181,000 from scenario B to A, and then it goes up,
By about 32K per.
yeah. So I mean, if council so wishes, and they can come in agreement on one that I can plug in, I don't want to plug all 6 in, but I can show you what the net effect on the bottom line will be, so you can actually visually see it.
How's the mayor feel?
Yeah, I
He's
wrote it
asking
down.
us, so let's get it.
No, it's been a good conversation. I went in conservative to hear what had to be said. And I know we have to raise more funds for infrastructure. We need to. The community is growing, and we want it to grow. And then down the line, that new construction will offset some other budgets coming down. But so I would entertain a change in my opinion. There's no heck of a lot of difference between each category on the funds raised.
The biggest jump, as I just mentioned, is between B and A,
Yeah.
as it goes from 0 to 3.
Yeah.
From A to B, right? The biggest jump?
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, but B, from B to F is roughly 126, which is really not a lot.
Yeah.
126 doesn't buy you a lot.
That's a 1.5%.
Well, council surprised me a little bit here. I thought you were a little bit more conservative in this. I misread you.
Well, I still think we need to think about the people who are on limited and fixed incomes. Our senior citizens will, you know, they've contributed a lot to our community too, and I think that we need to consider the affordability factor. I see that the biggest jump is in Cockle Lake area, whereas under each scenario in Silver Creek, you know, you're still not paying more than you did in the past. But that's a pretty big jump, and we have a fair amount of senior citizens living in that area. I think we need to consider that. When you said B, I was like, okay, I could do B. F, it's a stretch for me when I think about people on that fixed and limited situation.
Thank you. Good comments, Councilor Snow. All right, council, so where are we at? We don't have a consensus. We need to give direction to Director of Finance.
Can we compromise?
I was gonna say, could we split the difference? We have, I think we
Like
have
a C?
How
personal,
about a C?
C or D, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, let's get a C. A C is gonna have,
C's, yeah.
it's a pretty big jump from A to C,
Mhm.
right?
Well, it's only 30,000 difference between A
Yeah.
and B and C.
But from A and C?
Oh, B and C, yeah.
Which is
From-
A, just A to
from
B
A
is
to
3%
C.
increase, that's what I figured. B to C is not a big jump, but A to C is,
A to C is,
yeah, just 3.5 to.
She's putting a difference on it.
Sure. I'm
I'm okay with it, just.
I'm very
You're good.
concerned, I'm good
You
with C.
moved to C?
Well, I wasn't, I
No.
just wanted to see what the F would look like.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So,
I'd go with C.
I'm good with, yeah, I could do that, yeah.
Middle row.
Yeah, I could do with C.
that's a good compromise.
And just to stress too, the sample properties don't represent a trend in that neighborhood. We picked them because of the assessment change, just to show you what a, you know, for example, at Silver Creek, 8.8% increase, what that does. It doesn't mean that the whole area is 8.8.
No, and I understand.
Yeah, just wanted to clear it.
And I think the scenario is gonna be good enough for us to change and go in between this waste of your time. I think we should pick a letter like C, I think is good.
I think so
So
too.
we don't need to recalculate it, I don't think.
No.
It's not on the board.
Yeah, the difference between C and E and F is just 100,000.
So,
Mhm.
That's one, a little bit more than 1.25%. That's quite, you know, it's,
Yeah.
so C, which is
3.5.
8.8. Okay, so let's,
Are you able to do that now?
Yeah.
Mr. Curtin, you are, okay, good. You'll plug that in and want to look at it.
For me, it's.
I know. Hey, look at this one. That's good over here. But I do have a scenario, Scott, because I need to use them in our school, make your phone turn to.
No.
You don't have to be tax base.
I know for $20 to a senior citizen.
It's only-
But see, there's something else.
Between C and D, I mean, the three categories are not going to see an increase, but to address affordability, when you look at the average assessment increase, those on the fixed incomes generally tend not to reside in the properties and see the huge assessment increase because they are in the threat to average residences. So the people on the lakefront in Copper Lake will see, normally the biggest or the big homes. They're the ones that see that. But a well-spoken, well-fed, and they
I don't go around to that.
If you look
Middle of
at
May,
residential, you have three that don't go up, and you have four residential
but
that
then
go
we
up.
get more.
And in C, it's the same, three and four.
Have you seen the percentage of tax?
Yeah, I think
I wanted to see what this,
I had sunshine last night. I couldn't stay for the summer.
Perception is a better way to.
Great with
Union Avenue.
Okay, we got this one. Yes, that is the
That's like front.
That's like.
Receipt and we were
They did, like,
I mean, here,
flood there.
you gotta look at the fact that Union Street is well represented. One lot long.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why you didn't make us do that.
No, we don't.
No, we don't. We get one, usually, so if you get like, down the road, and you get like a game of chicken, so you're pulling up the driveway,
They usually find.
no, they do.
My neighbor across the street was complaining of direct, so I go and dig a drain up, so it doesn't rain. It takes like 2 minutes, seriously. Yeah. And I do my side, I sleep on my back, I'm killing it. It's just,
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, those increases after 3 are 32, 31.5. They didn't pay a lot of the other six.
Is it our big trip to Vernon this weekend?
Yeah, that was in down. Certifying, bringing everybody out, bringing some for domestic operations, like firefighting and such. Yeah, it's pretty important for us.
set up like,
Oh, the boys are
Probably
probably
should.
hockey or this weekend.
I just said, you know what, I'll find it.
Nobody asked me, I must recognize it.
Oh, no, they are.
Mr. Mayor, we're ready to proceed.
All right, let's bring the meeting back to order and turn over to Director of Finance.
So in the general fund, which includes, these are the adjusted numbers for the infrastructure levy and the main municipal levy. So that generates $165,100. And then in the police side of things, we generate another $55,700. So that increase also affects the police rate as well. So there is going to be more revenue in the police side of things. So the whole increase isn't strictly towards infrastructure. So on this side of things, because what I like to do, if you noticed here, my first contribution to the infrastructure reserve was what we had initially in these columns, if you were to look at your first draft. So by virtue virtue of the change here, 354.8, I would go change that to 354.8. So that offsets what the actual infrastructure levy is for. The other grading, so to speak, would be council's discretion. Do I want to put it in the public works fleet, do I want to put it in the infrastructure reserve, or what have you. So I'm tied to putting that number in there, so that changes it to 155.3. That council can now put to whatever reserve they so wish. On the police fund side of things, I would take that number and so these 76,000 from surplus, so that balances the police fund. And then now I could put an additional 155.3 into there, and that would balance it. And that takes us down to balanced 2022 budget. And then what I would do for the purposes of the next 4 years in the plan, is I balance the other 4 years, but I would obviously apply some percentage increase to 2019 so that these numbers increase over the next 4 years, and then a corresponding whatever that increase amounts to, then I would put that into the infrastructure reserve. Of course, that can all change next year. The number that's in there right now, 2020, doesn't mean that's what it's going to be after we go through this process next year. So,
Right.
but it is a starting point for a realistic financial plan. So. So that balances it under scenario C.
I like that personally.
I'm happy with that.
Doing this?
No, we don't need a motion tonight, do we? No.
No,
After a public consultation,
right, Mr. Mayor, so if council is good with this, we'll prepare for the next step. And Ms. Bellingham, that would be, and when?
So Mr. Cordes will input this into the bylaws, so the bylaw that'll come forward on Monday night for 3 readings will have this percentage increase incorporated into it. So then on Monday, the 8th of April, you do 3 readings, the 11th of April is your public consultation, and then the second meeting in April is adoption.
So everything that I've reviewed tonight in the prior meeting, like in blue or whatever, all those changes will be incorporated into the bylaw.
Quick question for you, or maybe something to state. Maybe there's a way we can communicate on how, a little bit better on how the tax end of things is, because in the end of it, like I said, people just look at the bottom line. So I don't know if we can take out a blurb in our council page at the end of it saying, this is what the tax rate change was for the school district this year, Fraser Valley Regional District this year, and our rate this year. When we go to put out our notices, just so that people have something based off, instead of just looking at the bottom net on the end of their tax notice and they went, oh, I paid $500 more than I did last year. Well, council did this. They think it's all on us personally, and I don't think it is that way. I don't know if there's a way that we can communicate that.
Well, if the whole town came out to my meeting on the 11th, I explained that, so.
I would love that too, but we all know in reality,
But
I know everybody's gonna watch the video as well.
No, but I do in that presentation, I do stress the fact that
This is ours.
that we've got this one line that we are responsible for on that tax notice. Everything else is out of our control.
Yes.
So if we can show that their taxes have gone up slightly, they can probably digest that not too badly, right? Because
Yeah.
in today's world, everything's going up.
Yeah.
But
I don't remember what we've done or what I received last year, but in the past, we did receive a little notice inside with each line, each section highlighted in the pie to explain what portion came from where, as well as, like you said, what came from municipal, regional district, what was our contribution. It did help.
Yeah.
And maybe we can do that again, or something similar. It is hard to communicate, for sure.
But should we put it in the paper, in our little community
The
section?
consultation notices have gone out for the
Yeah.
public consultation in the paper.
Yeah, I think they're talking about the district ballot.
I'm talking about,
Yeah, or district ballot.
Just like, I was thinking, just like, once we know where it knows, like, once you get the information, that you know regional district's gonna be this much money, school district's gonna be this much money. Right now, you're on hindsight, I understand that part of it. But like, once we know those numbers, okay, this is how these numbers came about. I don't know if it's something we can do on our package. I'm just asking, if it's not, that's fine, we go on, take it off the shoulders.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just respond, I'm sure we can get figures on a macro point of view, but again, each individual case will be different again based on their assessment, because all those are based on assessment.
Assessment.
Well, I've done tax inserts before, and I think they have here as well. I haven't done them since I've been here, but I don't want to overload it with information.
Too much, yeah,
It's because, you know, in my presentation on the 11th, I go through, I base it on an annual or an average assessment in town, and that includes all areas based on calculating from BC assessment. So I try to show what a person would pay on based on an average assessment, based on what we determine to be our final rate, which will come out of tonight's meeting. And then normally I won't have school tax by that April 11th. They're always the last to come in. Usually I'll have regional district, we've already got MFA and BC assessments raised, so I can show those, but in an insert, all you can do is really tell them what the rate is.
Yeah.
I don't want to do a lot of,
Just
it's
gets-
no good putting
It just gets
in,
muddy.
you don't want to put in, here's a sample property and hope.
How come I'm paying that, and yeah, no, I get
It's
that.
not going to be helpful to the
No, you're right.
property owners, so you have to be careful what you put in the insert. You want to put in general information, and you can't even put in a term your taxes are going up, because it doesn't mean that they are. There's other variables.
Yeah, there's too, yeah, I get what you're doing.
But it's something we'll look at, and we'll see what we've done in the past, and see what kind of condition is put in. And if we don't do an insert, we can always put something out on the district page, and on the website as well.
My thing's just communicating that your taxes are going up, it's letting them know, it's not all just on us. Basically how I'm looking at it, if your taxes go down, it's not because we'll just give you a savings all of a sudden. I don't know, it's hard to communicate that part of it.
And I don't even like making the generalization, like tonight, the tax rate's gone down from last year, even on scenario C. But does that mean everybody's taxes are going down? No. So I hate using the tax rate, well, reduce the tax rate. Why would they do that? Well, we're generating more revenue by doing it that way. If we left the tax rate where it was, that whole page would be red,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, if I can, just the story here is that you're being conscientious with taxpayers' dollars by generating only the revenue you believe necessary for the upcoming year. Therefore, that's allowing for some of those decreases, because quite frankly, if you wanted to be capricious, you could say, let's raise another $1 million, and we'll just raise the rates as required.
Yeah.
But this is a nice starting point to, you know, for your term and in saying, well, we want to try to build up our infrastructure reserves, and it's not over, it's not a ridiculous amount when you consider what our infrastructure deficit is. It's a pittance, really, but
Yeah.
realistically, no municipality in Canada is going to finance their infrastructure gap
Yeah.
deficit. We don't have enough money to do that.
But, yeah, I personally just wanna say though, staff has done a great job on cutting the costs and stuff like that and things. I think it's awesome seeing this, from last year's budget to this year's budget, just seems like night and day on a lot of things too, so I do wanna put my voice in appreciation for that, for me personally.
Thank you for putting that forward, Councilor Smith. Is there any more questions of the Director of Finance? Give them enough direction. Get your marching orders, sir?
Yep.
Are we happy?
Tomorrow.
All right. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Motion to close.
So,
Second, all those in favor? Carries.